Welcome to the Aging Well Firefighter, the podcast about thriving under stress, aging with purpose, and taking care of the people who take care of others, not just in the emergency services, but in everyday life. Whether you're on the front lines or standing with us, I'm here to help you fight wisely and age bravely.
What if our obsession with winning has made us forget how honorable it is to simply finish well? I want you to sit with that question for a moment, because we live in a world that loves winners. We love the highlight reel. We love watching someone break the tape and hold that trophy overhead, or even bite their gold medal standing on the podium, and stay stoic while everybody else applauds. Winning is exciting and inspiring. Winning represents effort and discipline, talent, sacrifice, and execution. And I'm not here to tell you that winning doesn't matter, but I do wonder if somewhere along the way, we started treating winning as the only thing that matters. And if that's true, then maybe we've missed something important. Maybe we've missed the honor and the satisfaction of simply finishing something that was hard. Finishing, just finishing, often requires more grit, more patience, more humility, and more character than people give it credit for. And that brings me to a box of medals. I've run a lot of races. Half Iron, Olympic, and sprint triathlons, duathlons, obstacle course races, marathons, half marathons, ultra marathons, and enough 5Ks and 10Ks to give you sympathy, foot, ankle, and knee aches just thinking about it. Honestly, I've lost track of how many races I've completed, but if I really wanted to figure it out, or at least ballpark the number, I could go into my box of medals and start counting. They're not all impressive medals, although I have taken home some hardware over the years, a few bronze, silver, or gold medals from races where I claimed a top spot in my age group. Yeah, those are fun. Those feel good. But most of the medals in that box aren't podium medals. Most of them are finisher medals, the ones everybody gets hung around their neck after crossing the finish line. I thought about my box of medals recently after seeing a social media post where there was some hate floating around about finisher medals at races like marathons, half marathons, triathlons, and other endurance events. And the critics sounded something like this: medals should go to people who earned them, not just people who showed up. And I understand the concern underneath that. I do. There is such a thing as over celebrating minimal effort or removing the challenge and then acting like the achievement is the same. I'm not a fan of that either. But here's where I think the finisher medal haters get it wrong. A finisher medal is not given for showing up, it's given for finishing. That's a very different thing. You can show up to a marathon. You can pin on the bib and take the pre-race selfie. You can stand around near the porta potties at 6:30 in the morning questioning your life choices, but none of those things earn you a finisher medal. The medal comes from crossing the finish line. It comes after completing the miles, after pushing yourself in training, after giving up that warm bed for cold, dark, early morning workouts, after chafing in places you didn't know could chafe. After long runs, sore knees, rigid nutrition, doubts and mental negotiations, crummy weather, toe blisters, and that point in the race where your legs threaten to file a grievance with the union and go on strike. That medal may not mean you beat everybody, but it does mean you finished what you started, and that still matters. Years ago, I had a personal training client who played semi-pro football. One day during a training session, he asked me what my plans were for the weekend, and I told him I was racing in a marathon. He asked how I thought I'd do, and I told him very honestly that I had a goal time, but I didn't have a snowball's chance of winning, not even my age group. And that absolutely baffled him. He looked at me like I had just told him I planned to spend my weekend hand sorting driveway gravel by size and shape. And he said, "Why would you bother entering a race if you don't think you can win?" And I've never forgotten that question because honestly, I think that question reveals an undercurrent in a lot of the criticism I see about finisher medals. Why bother if you're not going to win? Why train if you're not going to stand on the podium? Why celebrate crossing the finish line if somebody else crossed it faster? Why give a medal to someone who finished in the middle of the pack or the back of the pack? Or especially, as we refer to it in the racing community, dead frickin' last. Isn't that just celebrating mediocrity? And my answer is no, because not every race is against the field. Sometimes the race is against who you used to be. Sometimes it's against your old habits or the part of you that believes you can't do hard things. Sometimes it's against age or injury or stress, fear or grief. Sometimes the race is against the voice in your own head that says, "This is too much. You don't belong here. You should quit." And when a person keeps going anyway, I think that's worth honoring. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying the person who finishes a marathon in 6 hours accomplished the same thing competitively as the person who wins it in 2 hours and change. Of course they didn't. Different outcomes deserve different recognition. Winning matters, but completion matters too. A podium medal says you beat the field. A finisher medal says you finished the fight. Those are not the same thing, but they can both be meaningful. Every couple of years, the world tunes into the Olympics, and we marvel at what these athletes can do, the strength and speed and skill, the endurance. It's incredible. Olympic athletes are often symbols of discipline and sacrifice, resilience, hard work, and the pursuit of excellence. They show us what human beings can accomplish when talent and preparation meet single minded purpose. But there's another side of that story that we often ignore. A lot of elite athletes pay a steep price to become elite. Some leave home at a young age to train. Some spend years with schedules built almost entirely around performance. Some live under constant pressure from coaches, sponsors, fans, media, parents, governing bodies, and their own expectations. Some manipulate weight, food, sleep, and recovery in ways that might produce performance, but don't always produce health. Some push through injuries that would send the rest of us straight to the couch with an ice pack, a bottle of Motrin, and a dramatic sigh. And yes, in some sports and in some eras, athletes have turned to performance enhancing drugs because the pressure to win was that intense. Now, I'm not saying this to attack elite athletes, quite the opposite. I think a lot of them deserve even more compassion than they get. Because what we often see is the medal ceremony with the national anthem and the slow motion replay. We see that perfect moment, but we don't always see the cost, the strained relationships, the anxiety, the depression, the eating disorders, the identity crisis, the body that hurts all the time, missing family events or a normal childhood, the pressure of being treated less like a person and more like a performance machine. By holding up elite winners as a universal ideal, is it possible that we're teaching people to admire outcomes without asking whether the process was healthy? Think about athletes like Dan Jansen. Jansen was a world class speed skater. At the 1988 Winter Olympics, his sister Jane died of leukemia on the same day he was scheduled to compete. He raced under the weight of unimaginable grief and fell in both of his events. I remember watching that in high school and the entire student body talking about it the next day. I also remember reporters asking him question after personal question about it until he broke down in tears. That story is heartbreaking, but it's also deeply human. It reminds us that even the best trained body in the world still carries a human heart. Or think about Simone Biles. At the Tokyo Olympics, she stepped away from competition while dealing with mental health concerns and what's called the twisties. It's a dangerous condition in gymnastics where an athlete loses their sense of orientation in midair. Now, if you're not familiar with gymnastics, losing your air awareness isn't like forgetting where you parked. It's not a minor inconvenience. When you're flipping and twisting through the air at elite speed, losing your orientation can be catastrophic. And yet, some people criticized her for stepping back. They saw it as quitting. I saw someone with the courage to say the cost of continuing right now is too high. And that takes strength. Not the kind that can be measured on a scorecard or at a finish line, but real strength. Or consider Naomi Osaka. In 2021, she withdrew from the French Open and spoke openly about depression and anxiety, especially around media obligations and public scrutiny. And again, some people criticized her. But what she did helped expose a problem. She helped remind us that athletes are not machines, they're not content factories. They're not just bodies performing for our entertainment. They are people. And sometimes the most heroic thing a person can do is not push harder. Sometimes the most heroic thing a person can do is stop before they break. And that might be hard for some of us to hear, especially those of us in first responder culture. In the fire service, EMS, law enforcement, dispatch, military, healthcare, we know something about pushing through. We know about doing hard things when we're tired and showing up when other people are having the worst day of their lives. During an emergency, sometimes you just have to lock in, compartmentalize, execute, and keep moving. That can save lives. But that crisis mindset can become destructive when it becomes a lifestyle. Ignore rest, avoid help, suck it up, buttercup, don't let anyone see you struggle. That sounds like a formula for top performance until you start looking at the cost. Burnout, anxiety, depression, families who learn to tiptoe around your stress and just accept the leftovers of whatever the job didn't take. A body that ages faster than it should with injuries that never heal. A mind that's never really off shift. That's not winning. Listen, there's a difference between excellence and obsession. The fire in your belly should fuel you, not burn you to the ground. So maybe, and I'm just throwing this out there, maybe the winner isn't always the best model for the rest of us. Maybe sometimes the better model is the humble finisher, the person who pursues a difficult goal but doesn't sacrifice their marriage, their kids, their friendships, their mental health, their identity to get there. The person who signs up for a race knowing that they probably won't win, but also knowing that beating everyone isn't the only meaningful outcome. The person who travels the distance, but doesn't give it all up for a few ounces of gold and a fancy ribbon. That person might not make the highlight reel. They might not be standing on the podium with a wreath or a trophy or an oversized novelty check, but they may be modeling something most of us desperately need: sustainable, consistent effort. perspective, balance, the ability to pursue hard things without turning every goal into a do or die PR or ER effort. Let's be honest. Most of us are not going to be Olympic champions or win major marathons. There, I said it. You and I are probably not going to be world record holders. Most of us are trying to do something much less glamorous and much more practical. Stay healthy, stay sane, stay strong enough to do the job, well enough to enjoy retirement, and present enough that the people we love don't have to compete with our exhaustion or our stress. And that may not sound as exciting as a gold medal, but I think it's a better definition of success, especially if your goal is aging well. Now, I want to make sure I'm not misunderstood. I am not advocating for a no winners philosophy. I'm not saying that competition is bad, and I'm not saying we should stop keeping score. I'm certainly not saying everyone should get the same medal for wildly different performances. That kind of thinking can cheapen effort. It can remove the incentive for people who are motivated by competition like me. And frankly, it can be insulting to the people who really did separate themselves from the field. If you win or set a record or take a spot on the podium, you should be celebrated for that. But celebrating a finisher doesn't cheapen the winner. That's a hill I'm willing to fight for. Finishing and winning are different honors. A finisher medal does not say, I was the best. It says, I completed the distance. And in endurance events, especially, that distance is the challenge. Because the marathon itself is a beast. It will test you. And if you cross that finish line, you earned that finisher medal, regardless of how you placed. That's what those medals in my box are to me. They're not proof that I was the best. Most of them definitely are not that. But they are reminders. They remind me of the early mornings when I didn't want to get out of bed. They remind me of races where my legs felt good and races where everything went sideways. They remind me of miles where I felt strong and miles where I had to bargain with myself or come up with tricks just to keep myself moving. They remind me that I can do hard things, that I have done hard things, and sometimes I need that because life will hand you other races, not ones with bib numbers and timing chips. Sometimes that race is a rough season at work or a family crisis. Sometimes it's rebuilding your fitness after you let it slide. Sometimes it's admitting you need help for stress or trauma or depression. Sometimes it's choosing not to quit on yourself when quitting would frankly be easier. And when you've practiced finishing hard things, you carry that with you. That medal may sit in a box, but the lesson lives in you. Maybe we need different kinds of medals. Maybe we need a medal for working out with trying to destroy yourself or taking a rest day before your body forces the issue. Maybe we need a medal for going to therapy before the wheels come off. Maybe we need a medal for saying no to one more commitment because your family's been getting your leftovers. Maybe we need a medal for getting 8 hours of sleep. And honestly, in fire and EMS, that might deserve a parade. Maybe we need a medal for best work life balance. Now, I'm being tongue in cheek here, of course, but my point here is that a lot of people know how to chase achievement, while far fewer know how to stay whole while doing it. And if the pursuit of success costs you your health, your family, your identity, then there's a hard question to ask. Did you win or did you just get a medal? Look, I'm not against winners. I love competition. I love seeing people push the boundaries of what's possible. I love watching someone train and sacrifice and rise to the occasion. Winning matters, but winning isn't the only thing that matters. Sometimes the more useful model isn't the person standing on the top step. Sometimes it's the person who trained before work, loved their family after work, dealt with injury, managed stress, and crossed that finish line without losing themselves in the process. And that's not mediocrity. That's maturity. That's aging well. So, yeah, I'll keep my finisher medals. Not because they prove I beat everybody, but because they remind me I kept going. They remind me that effort matters. They remind me that I can pursue hard things without making the outcome my whole identity. And maybe that's a lesson that a lot of us need, especially those of us in high stress jobs, the ones who are used to being the helper, the tough one, the dependable one. You don't have to sacrifice everything good in your life to prove that you're committed. Sometimes the goal is simpler than that. Keep training, keep serving, keep growing and adapting. Keep loving your people. Keep taking care of your body and taking care of your mind. Keep showing up. And when the race gets hard, keep moving toward the finish line. Because maybe the real win is not standing above everybody else. Maybe the real win is crossing the finish line with your health, your people, and your sense of self still intact. So I'll leave you with the question that I started with. What if our obsession with winning has made us forget how honorable it is to simply finish well? Maybe it's time we remembered. And maybe, just maybe, that finisher medal around your neck has been trying to tell you that all along. If this episode gave you something to think about, or maybe helped you look at your own finish lines a little differently, I'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and follow or share it with someone who's trying to keep going without losing themselves along the way. Because around here, we're not just chasing podiums. We're learning how to keep showing up with purpose and perspective and a little bit of hard-earned wisdom. Until next time, friends, keep training, keep recovering, keep moving forward. And as always, fight wisely, age bravely.